if the marriage has to last a long time, you grow beyond sex. There's friendship, respect, love, and just gratitude that we are sharing a journey together. Without this gratitude, it is very difficult to have a long-lasting relationships. Imagine the most beautiful sun. Imagine the most glorious sun. Now imagine two people standing with their backs to the sun. What falls in front of them are their shadows. These shadows are the human beings' egos. Most conflict is between two shadows. People have a certain idea about themselves, and then they have a certain idea about what the other person is all about. Similarly, both ways, both people have that argument. And then these shadows, these egos, have a conflict with each other. Sometimes you compromise, especially if you're married. If these two people are married, there's a compromise. There's also a certain amount of love. But most of the human love is also coming from ego. It is laced with possession, with lust, with needs and wants. It is all about ego. So even when people get married and when they have this relationship, it is still egos that are getting married. Two shadows getting married. Now the shadows can't have a long journey together. Sooner or later the conflict will be hard to bear. And that's what usually happens in marriage. If somebody asks me for advice whenever they're getting married, I said, do your very best to keep the ego out of your marriage. Sooner or later, ego does creep in. Conditioning of each other's creeps in. What their programming has made them out to be creeps in. Not only that, certain envy, certain jealousy, certain possession creeps in. And it eventually creates problems where one is not capable of meeting the other's needs and neither is the other capable of meeting the other needs. Problem is that we are looking at each other to solve each other's problem, to fill each other's needs. I think there was a dialogue in Rocky movie, in the first one, he goes, I have holes and she has holes, together we fill each other's holes. Well, that's a hope and a prayer that most marriages live on. And for a while it's kind of fun, but eventually, only thing that makes a marriage last is true friendship. True friendship is the catalyst that makes for long marriages. Eventually in long marriages, I've also noticed that usually both partners, you know those two people who had their backs turned to this beautiful sun? Slowly they have recognized and they have come to that, hey, we are living in shadows. And slowly they have turned around and they're facing the sun. And when they're facing the sun, the shadows fall behind them. And only the luminous sun is shining on their faces. Not only is it shining on one person's face, it's also shining in the other person. And then you become capable of seeing each other as souls, as these beings of light, as these sparks of that sun, having a human experience, just grateful for the ride. We are just both sparks of the divine, having a human experience. When that respect seeps into a marriage, a different type of marriage takes place. This is a marriage of deep friendship, deep respect, deep understanding, beyond sex, Eventually if the marriage has to last a long time, you grow beyond sex. There's friendship, respect, love, gratitude, and just gratitude that we are sharing a journey together. Without this gratitude, it is very difficult to have a long-lasting relationships. Root cause of all divorces, in my humble opinion, is the ego. Conditioning of each partner. Each partner comes from a different background. Each partner has grown up with a different set of circumstances that gives them conditioning and programming according to them. Each partner brings their own ego mindset to a marriage. Early on, this mindset can be overcome with love for each other. There is also basically sex in the marriage, and a lot of things can get covered up. But then sometimes they could be having conflict, but I've seen people end up having children. And the focus shifts from each other, and the focus goes onto the children. And the focus stays on children as long as children are really small, but then there comes a time that the children have grown. But by that time, the parents, the two people who originally got married, have also grown. They have grown separately and differently. And life has given you some resentments with each other. There might be a lot of lovely situations, but there can also be some traumatic situations. There could also be infidelity. There could be hurting of each other's egos. This has to be understood, because once the focus is off the children, and now you have to look at each other again. Now there is no children to bind you together. Now you have to live with each other. If at this moment you are not each other's friends and you are not in love with each other, can be a very difficult process to stay together. But I always found people who survive this phase of this life, and they swim through this, where they have grown up, grown apart, children they have done their duties, they have done their responsibilities. This now, their new grown up parts, they can still come together. They're still staying together out of friendship and love for each other. They can have a beautiful marriage. And I also found that most likely they also have a spiritual aspect to their marriage. Moment you start seeing the luminous sun in you and your shadows are gone, you can now turn around and look at your spouse or other people, and you can start seeing the same sun shining on their faces. Now there's nothing to fight. Now you realize it's the same sun shining in everybody. The same luminescent sun, God, is shining in all beings. And then in the case of your spouse, this person that has spent some life with you, you say, I see him as a creature of God, as a child of God. She is a child of God, having a human experience, and she has chosen to spend her marriage with me. She has chosen me to give her an experience of husband, and this universe has also blessed me, her company, to give me an experience what it's like to have a wife. And together we experience what it was like to be parents. And now together we can experience what it'll be like to get old and one day leave this planet. That's what spirituality can bring to your marriage. Spirituality makes you realize that the other person is a being of light, having this human experience. And we have just chosen each other to have these experiences, to have children, to be parents, to be lovers, to be providers, to be everything. Once you recognize that in the other person, reasons for divorce disappear. But if you still need to divorce, that is also understandable. But as two couples who have swam through life and they have come to this spot and discovered spirituality, usually stay together till they depart. Divorce is not a happy thing. It's not a good thing. But I found, and I always find, that it is always the ego that is always hurt of one or the other. And chances are that there is hurt both ways. Hard to explain, hard to understand, but that's how it is. Marriage, living with somebody, requires dedication, love, and most of all, friendship.